Hi, I'm Dan and this is my channel RuscoDev. What we're looking at here is Tin Can Forum. This is a PHP web forum that I wrote from scratch as a hobby project, really just to see if I could. And you can see we have a couple of the usual stuff you would see in a web forum. We have board groups, we have boards, and inside the boards we have threads. Now there's a bunch of test data already loaded into here. These are the posts in this test thread, just using lorem ipsum text. So I want to show you a little bit of the usage here and how it works in code. So let's go ahead and look at threads, for example. So here's a thread. Now if I go into my editor here, you can see that thread is an object, tc thread, which extends tc object. Now, there's a few things that are properties of the thread ID, the ID of the board that it's in, the thread title, the ID of the first post, which user created it, which user last updated it, created time, whether it's pinned, locked, or deleted. And then there's a couple of bits of logic in here. For example, you can't delete the first post or without removing the thread entirely. Get parent, get name, get primary key. Now these are part of my object system. Get primary key value, get DB table, and get DB fields all come from TC object. And these are specifically for loading and populating from the database. You see right here, they just return null, or they're just abstract functions until you overwrite them. But there's a function here called populate from DB, which populates objects from the database. You instantiate an object, you can populate it from the database. But that's getting a little bit off track. That's just getting into the depth of how the object system works. But I want to talk more about threads. So let's create a thread. Now what happens when you create a thread? Let's look in the web browser first and create a thread. So I'm going to call it, this is a test thread, which I've already done. I'm going to put hello world in here and submit the thread. So now we have a new thread. So what's happened here is inside the board, the thread exists and there's a first post inside the thread. So posts are TC post. Again, you're going to see some pretty familiar things: post ID, user ID, thread ID, and how that actually works is through what I'm calling actions. Now, there's an action here called create thread. This is exposed to the user. So when the user submits their thread as a HTML form, we go ahead and we grab a few pieces of information like the board ID, the thread title, and the post content for the first post. And we sanitize these things. And then we do a couple of things. So there's a controller here called thread controller, and all controllers are able to authenticate a user. If the user is not authenticated, we actually don't continue. So this section here handles file attachments. We didn't upload any file attachments, so not really a problem. Now what we want to do here is make sure the user is allowed to create a thread. So we ask the controller if they can create a thread in that particular board ID. And if they can, the controller, which I will show after this, creates the thread. There's no if there are attachments, it goes ahead and handles the attachments. Now, however, if there are errors, then we send if there are no errors, I'm sorry, we send the user to their new thread. However, if there are errors, we send them back to the new thread page with an error. And then we set header location and exit from the script. Now the controller is in here, controllers, and it is the thread controller. Everything gets a controller. So the thread controller extends TC controller, which is tin can controller. And here's that function we were looking at, can create thread. We're checking the user has permission. We're checking the thread can be created in the given board. And we want to make sure that the board even exists. And then here's the function right here that actually creates the thread. And we go ahead and we do a little validation here. We make sure that the thread title isn't shorter than it should be. Make sure it's not longer than it should be. We sanitize the post content here. And then right here we create the TC thread object. And we set the board ID, the first post ID, or created by user, updated by user, created time, and all that kind of thing. And then the new thread goes through a database system and saves the object. And assuming there's no exception thrown, and there's no errors there, we go ahead and create the first post. Now this is the user's post that built from the content that they entered when they created the thread. And this is then saved as a post. We return the new thread, and that's it. There's also a function here for editing a thread. So I can go ahead, I can edit this post. For example, I can delete the thread and go back to the boards here. And under administration, I can actually create new boards. So we have blue board, purple board, blue board again, and green board. These are actually just randomized. But let's go ahead and make a new board. I'm going to call this test board 1. We're going to keep it in board group 1, and the weight shows you how it appears in the list of boards. So we're just going to leave it at 0. We hit add board. Now we have test board 1. So when I go back to the forum, you'll see there's now a test board 1. And there are no threads. So if we wanted to, we could actually just go ahead and make another test thread. Hello world again. Submit the thread. And now we have a thread inside test board 1. So this is just a quick introduction to Tin Can Forum, a little web forum that I wrote in PHP just as a hobby. I might make some more videos because there's a lot more involved here than what I've shown, but I think this is a pretty good introduction. Thank you for watching.